philosophers do a lot of different things. One of them is asking questions. The way that children often go through a phase of asking why questions about everything, driving their parents to distraction if they make a serious effort to answer them. And that most children grow out of that phase sooner or later, but somebody once said that the ones who don't are the philosophers. And so asking why questions that's part of philosophy, although again, of course, not every why question is a philosophical one. But one thing that's really notable, even with the kind of conversations that you get between children and parents, I mean really young children in this phase of asking why, is that if the parents make any serious attempt to answer the questions, they're kind of driven in what you might call a philosophical direction, because the child asks why about some very ordinary thing, and then the parent gives some kind of explanation, but then the child straight away asks why about the explanation itself, and so the parent, if they're going to go along with this, has to find an explanation for the explanation. And very often that drives you in the direction of something that is really quite philosophical, because the parents are trying to find more abstract and general things to say in response to this request for an explanation of an explanation. So that's a way in which quite ordinary lines of questioning, when they're just pressed a bit further, take you into something philosophical. And another kind of question that philosophers have traditionally asked and still do ask, what is questions? Like, what is knowledge? What is suffering? What is time? These kind of questions. What is justice? And these also have this very abstract and general kind of character. And again, I mean, not all questions of this kind would now be regarded as philosophical questions. I mean, for example, if you ask what is electricity, that's a question that you should ask of a physicist, not of a philosopher. But a lot of the ones that I mentioned are questions which have been asked by philosophers for well over 2,000 years. And of course, I mean, there's not much point in asking questions if you're not going to make some attempt to answer them. So another thing that philosophers do is to try to find ways of answering these questions, because I mean, many of the questions are ones where when you first hear them, you really have no idea what a good answer would be, what it would look like, how you'd find one, how you would test an answer. And and a question like what is knowledge is one which I think would leave most of us just flummoxed the first time you heard it, with no kind of background. And so a lot of what philosophy is concerned with is finding ways of getting some sort of grip on these questions, finding out what kind of potential answers we might give, and then thinking of ways in which we can test those answers.